Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm David from EduSourced, and this is part of an ongoing webinar series we've been doing for a couple years now, where we spotlight various clients of ours and give them the opportunity to talk about their program to you, share some insights they've learned, and hopefully foster some good discussion. If you want to view any of our past webinars, go to edusource.com, and at the top right of the screen, there's a webinars button. Hit that, and then everything will be listed, or you can just go to YouTube and search for it there. Quick introduction on us, EduSource. We built the market-leading software tool for client-based experiential learning, including MBA programs like Neeley Associates, which is what you'll be hearing about today. We also work with undergraduate business programs, engineering programs, and in some cases, college-wide implementations spanning grad and undergrad. As we go, just a quick programming note. We will be pausing for questions at about the halfway mark and again at the end. So I encourage you to submit any questions you have as we go. This is best if it's a discussion. There is a questions box in GoToWebinar that you should see on your control panel. If you click that, it'll give you a prompt to enter in your questions. Go ahead and enter those in as we go. And then when we pause, I can go back and I'll read those questions to our presenter. And with that, Ed Riefenstahl from TCU Neeley is our presenter. He is the director of experiential there and operates Neeley Associates, an experiential program that's been around for a while. He's been at this for 13 years, and I think they've really done a fantastic job running a professional shop and making sure their clients are, needs are well met, obviously on top of having to deal with student needs and making sure their learning objectives are met. So with that, Ed, I'll turn it over to you and we'll hear from you.
Sure, fine. Thank you, David. I guess, David, can everyone see the screen?
Yes, everything is working perfectly.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let me. Well, there I am after quite a few years, and somebody telling me that Ed, your picture on LinkedIn looks like you looked 10 years ago. So I was trying to this past weekend find a more current photo, but. Welcome, everyone. And David, thanks for the opportunity just to share whatever insights that we have here at TCU in the full-time MBA program, and that is my focus today. David asked me to share some thoughts around these topics. Firstly, to give everybody an overview of the different type of projects our MBAs have the opportunity to work or be part of. One we call the formal, another is ad hoc, and the other we call Neeley Insights. And I'll explain all of those, but primarily it will be on the formal because that's the trigger for any of the ad hoc projects, and I'll describe those shortly. Then talk about some of the challenges faced in bringing a consultancy, quote unquote, into an academic environment where we charge clients for charge of fees, but also part of it is where we also pay our students for their involvement. Talk about how we started to recruit clients early on. Some of it will not be necessarily earth-shattering or shaking. Then talk about a personal extra development program for a select group of students who, for all intents and purposes, have come to lead the formal program over the years. And lastly, what we have branded or call Neeley Insights, which is a blend of a consulting engagement with a kind of a case competition. So just a little bit on the very diverse background. After I got out of business school many years ago at Emory, and always had an interest in consulting. But anyway, I've been in the commercial arena, the nonprofit arena, and for the previous years had been with Ernst & Young and KPMG Consulting, which then became Bearing Point. Before coming to TCU to launch this program. And ever since '92, I've been doing consulting. Some of that time I was having my own small boutique firm before being asked to join Ernst & Young, but also still doing, time permitting, some consulting on the side. And part and parcel of that, as I go to the next, well, let me pause for a second. Just the diversity of the clients that we've had over the years. And in that formal program, we're fortunate that we've got some recurring clients that we've built up some credibility with. And also, of course, the client sees value in it for various reasons, which we'll get to. But how did it come to be? Two individuals, the right time, the right place in their careers, and we're aligned. And as David said, 13 years and roughly averaging, 11 to 12 projects annually, 8 to 9 what we call formal, 2 to 3 ad hoc on an annual basis. And how this all came together, as I was leaving Bearing Point, we had a health scare with my wife, and many years ago we had talked about going into business with each other, and decided that we would buy a franchise working with small business owners, and I would restart ROI Consultants, spending time with my wife on the alternative board, which was the franchise, and then doing management consulting in those areas that were on that previous screen, but primarily, process and performance improvement. One of my clients became the Entrepreneurship Center at the Neeley School of Business, and the new incoming head of the MBA had found out about my background and asked me out to lunch, and we sat down. I shared with him some of my experiences, and he had shared that he very much wanted to introduce a sophisticated or program like the one we're going to talk about today. And he had found I believe he thought I had cashed out, which I had not, even though just about all of our boys, 3 boys, were out of school. He had found an assistant recruiter's position. And so he said, "Oh, Ed, I think you'll be great." And I said, "Bill, I didn't tell him I couldn't live off of the proposed salary, but said, my commitment is to my wife. We just bought this business franchise. I'm going to work with her, and that's my #1 commitment." And he said, "Well, you know what? I'll tell you what, let's see how this will work. We will treat you like faculty. You will work off of objectives as you build the program, and then you're pretty much free to continue doing what you are doing." So that was the introduction or the invitation. Went home and said, "Okay, let's do it." And the formal, just a quick snapshot. The formal projects are 3 credit-hour electives in the spring semester. So going on right now, we have 10 different projects for fee-paying clients. First-year MBAs in the 2-year program. As I said, my focus has been with the full-time MBAs. Anything we call an ad hoc project can occur any time of the year, but only those students who have been through the formal program have the opportunity to be involved if they so desire, to be selected, and then they are compensated. So we have a couple of those going on at present. High-level overview of the formal program, and we're going to go through that, but what we think is a kind of a unique blend of things. When I first was coming on board, I looked at some existing programs. I actually gone back to Emory and talked with a person there who had a focused strategic marketing program. Looked at what UT was doing at the time, looked at what Rice was doing at the time, and in essence kind of cobbled some of those different ideas together. But just looking at what you're going to hear more about, the formal program is an annual cycle. We have a small group of second years who are selected to be principals. We'll talk about them. We're not focused in one particular area, so we're not supply chain, we're not quote unquote all marketing. There's a breadth and diversity of projects. The focus is those first years. They actually do apply, but they do express interest. We'll talk about how that works. The resources that are behind each of the teams, a mix of faculty, professional consultants, and business executives, three-tier fee structure, a formal project charter that is signed by all parties on the engagement, 3 confidential peer reviews of the team, and a money-back guarantee. So that is a mix of items that, or a blend of items that I believe this is a very kind of a unique way of going to market. To help frame the formal program, it's important to talk about the supporting resources. So you have me, background, quite a few years of business experience, and I'll talk about how we first started with a faculty partner. I pay a faculty subject matter expert. So we have 10 different faculty members with different areas of expertise right now that are being paid behind the scenes, one per team, to give 6 to 10 hours of assistance. The second year principals are principals. They are paid rather, and they have their own team that they are coaching at this point. Built an advisory board, I think maybe about the 3rd year or 4th year, where you can see the various firms that are represented. That group helps with scoping on the front end and does 2 quality assurance reviews during the spring semester with their respective teams, 1 of those individuals per team. And then roughly 3 weeks before delivery, all of the above and this subject to the client, invite the executives from the DFW area to come to campus, put them on different panels of roughly 6 to 8, and each of the client teams go through 2 different panels to get feedback, and also forces focus for those last few weeks of delivering to the client the final presentation. We also have within the business school a Center for Professional Development, and they use that resource primarily because they're not content experts, but just to help with the review of an outside eyes after the executive panel, business panel has looked at it, of putting some finishing touches on their final deliverable presentation. The cycle flow over this 12-month period is that the principals are those selected. They're those that will be selected for this next cycle are currently working on projects, and they become selected by our existing principal group with a review and sign off by me right at the end of the semester. Over the summer, we meet with that group. Obviously, some have internships that are not in the area. I don't meet as frequently, but we work on things to get them to come together as a team, and then they focus on enhancements, and we give them extra development opportunities based on what they express as their needs. And over that summertime, I'm going back to our clients that we just have had, visiting with them, gauging the likelihood of their wanting to come back, as well as using that period to meet with prospective clients. In the fall, the principals now are back for the semester, and we start to hone in on prospective clients, and they then, as we come into November, maybe late October, they're assigned particular prospective clients, and they work on kind of crafting what we call a request for consideration, and we invite the prospective clients to come typically the Friday before Thanksgiving to what we call the Meet Prospective Clients Day. And this I'll talk about later about the challenge of demand and supply that exists with this program every year, but is obviously a bit easier now when we know we have some recurring clients. But first year MBAs, as this is an elective, if you recall, they are invited to come and hear each of the kind of 2-minute overviews by each of the prospective clients, and then those clients have tables. The students, visit with those prospective clients, and then they are given instructions as to how to apply We use EduSourced for this application process. And what they do when they apply is they provide their resumes, and they also indicate, their top, it varies every year. This past year was your top 5 choices, why you should be picked, and what your interest is, and then what you think you will bring to the table. Then we start actually on Sunday, that following Sunday. I sit down with the principals and begin to put together what we call the best balanced 4-person team. And that relates to the sub-dot point about expectations. We clarify, learn the first year the hard way, clarifies with the client that, look, we don't know what the supply of students are going to be, but we think we kind of have an idea. And the full-time program at Neeley is very small. It's very personal. This past year, I think 44, 45 first-year MBAs, pretty much the same number as last year. And but we tell the clients we try not to invite anymore to meet prospective clients day than we think we can handle. Worst case is if they are not selected because of a supply of students more than we anticipated, we will handle their project in an ad hoc fashion where second-year MBAs will work on it, and I'll come to that a bit later. Every year we don't know necessarily who the clients will be, so that's kind of my focus. Late summer, fall, trying to lock that down and turn those over to the principals, and then really not knowing who the supply of first-year MBAs will be. Okay, let's see. All right, so okay, my screen is not going down here right now. Looks like my computer's locked up. Hang on, let me get out of this for a second. Okay, make sure I'm on the right. There we go. Okay, good. So as I said, we tell the client as far as expectation management is the best balanced 4-person team, scoping a project to approximately 350 hours. Best balance being when they apply, we will look at their interests and their experience and put that together and get that hopefully done prior to Thanksgiving. We tell the clients that no, they cannot pick anybody, but if there is somebody that they seem to have a connection with on Meet Prospective Clients Day, that previous Friday, that let us know, and we'll take that into account. But we make no commitments on that, and the client understands that, or prospective client. After putting the teams together, I then go and do internal checkpoints. I go to core faculty, I go to career services, I go to the head of the MBA program, I go to their facilitator, coaches, whatever, second-year MBAs, who are, I guess, mentors to them. Just try to look at their DISC profiles and, just kind of do some checks to see if there's any issues with this prospective team that we put together. And after doing that, if everything's cleared or we have to make any adjustments, we announce that internally to each of the teams first, gauge if there's any reaction. Haven't had any, fortunately, so far. And then go ahead and invite the client to what we call the annual clients meets team reception, the first Thursday in December. And of course, the client has had in advance the background, the resumes of who their new team will be. At that reception, the one takeaway is that they need to lock in their kickoff meeting, which is the second week back in the winter semester. And you'll see why we target that, because it ties back to boot camp here, the first day of boot camp. Prior to that reception, I have my semi-annual advisory board meeting of those consultants, and the acronym we use is NELAB for Neeley Experiential Learning Advisory Board. And they end up with a team, and they get to stay for the reception, so they are there. And if we've had the chance to lock down the faculty subject matter expert also in this time frame between roughly Thanksgiving and that first Thursday in December, the faculty SMEs are also invited. So that's kind of a nice way to kind of come together, get to know each other, talk about the project, but importantly, get that kickoff meeting on the calendar. We learned over the years, we had a lot more classes than we do now, and the pushback was originally this was a 250-hour 4-person team with more classes, and the students came back and just said, this is too much. This needs to be 6. Really should be more credits. I advocated for that, but internally, just with how curriculum goes, that was not going to happen. So we looked at various ways to take out some content that we had, but move some of that content delivery, in essence, to the principals who meet with weekly, but then also up the hours to provide more value to the client. And as I said, it's 350 hours, and you can break it down. It roughly comes to in an ideal world, 7 to 8 hours per week per student. We boot camp, first week back in January, we have a boot camp where this has become led strictly by the principals now, those second-year MBAs, focused on team building and really preparing for the project kickoff meeting, and details about coming just extremely professional, as you would in any client kickoff meeting. That second Friday boot camp, they've met with the client. Hopefully that has happened for all of our teams. And now they're ready. They've introduced the concept of the project charter. And that second day of boot camp, second Friday, is focused on, okay, let's look at the charter. Let's get working on that. Let's start to scope this down. And then the third Friday, whereas the first 2 boot camps are maybe 3/4 days, sometimes a full day each, depending upon the content. The third day, we have a couple of hours where the NELAB, or the advisory board consultant coach, comes in and helps, again, with the scoping and the charter and the work breakdown structure, that WBS there. They meet individually again with their team, but then we have everybody report out at the end as to lessons learned, and do a little cross-pollination there. We have given each of the teams a very detailed project roadmap, laid out by week as what we recommend should happen. And we use EduSourced to track this, have the students track with this, as well as upload the content, follow-up or prior content that ties to each of the things that follow. As I mentioned earlier, each of our advisory board members, after that third Friday, do conduct 2 separate quality assurance reviews, just as they do in their professional consulting businesses, the organizations they work for. There are 3 individual status update sessions with myself and a faculty program team member who this year is Dr. Abby Ship. And in fact, this week is when we're having the first status update session with each of the teams. I've got the final for this afternoon. Along the roadmap, they have individual meetings scheduled with the faculty SME. I say scheduled. It's on the roadmap for them to have that time to work with that person and get use the resource. We have a client midpoint checkpoint, which comes in more of a formal sit down with the client right before spring break. During spring break, or right before they come back after spring break, I touch base with the client to see as to what the summary of the midpoint checkup was that I got from each of the teams compares to what I heard directly from the client. And then roughly 3 weeks before final delivery, typically the first Friday in April, we bring business executives, kick it off with a lunch, and I think this year we may have had, I can't remember, 36, put them on panels, as I said, 7 of 8, and each of the teams go through 2 different panels. So with each of those that I've just identified, those teams are supposed to write their takeaways, any insights learned or takeaways, and upload those to EduSourced, just as they do their project charter and work plan. So that becomes, our ability to check, and the principal's ability also to check to see, again, are the teams really working this, and if they're not working it, why, and where do we need to provide assistance or direction? As that just adds beyond the individual status updates that we have, those 3 status updates. And then 3 confidential peer reviews, and again, we use EduSourced for those peer reviews. Fee structure of the formal spring semester program. I really need to raise the fees. I'm saying it's 6 years. It may be 7, but I have to go back and look. But it's $13,000, and larger clients, $8,500 for a small business and larger nonprofits, $6,500 for a small nonprofit, and that's wanting to cover direct costs, which I pay the principals $5,000 and the faculty member anywhere between $1,200 to $1,500. And since the students are involved in the selection process, that drives, in essence, the revenue. But a lot of these students are job changing. The average here is about 4.5 years of work experience. It is an average, right? And they're looking to either change maybe the areas of focus or career industry type careers. And anyway, so they this is a resume builder for them, and therefore getting the brand of certain clients out there is very, very important. And so tend to skew toward the larger clients. But if there is a nonprofit that the students feel they really want to, there's enough interest, I have enough, and even if they had no budget, I have enough overage from the larger clients to take care of all cost of the program. By the way, they're drilling outside my window right now on the new building. Hopefully that is not heard, but I apologize for that. Grades, again, this has kind of shifted over the year. When I first started with a faculty member, there were a lot of things that corresponded with a kind of a regular syllabus. But where it is now is that it's all about client satisfaction. I have a follow-up with each of the clients with a 10-item survey, asked each of the clients even to, quote unquote, if they had to grade the team, to give the team a grade. Now, of course, I have insights in case any clients are problematic, but that drives the starting point. So assume it's a great project, it's an A. The next thing that comes into play is the peer reviews. So there's 3 peer reviews. The first one is going to be discharged by EduSourced this Friday. And then the principal will conduct individual meetings with the team members and the team as a whole. So the first 2 peer reviews hopefully will be corrective if necessary. But that final peer review then really is a determining factor of the grade. So you can have an A, but if a person or people didn't kind of hold up what they were accountable for, their grade will be impacted negatively. Thirdly, would be inputs from the principals. If we get down to that, again, typically it's the first 2, but the principals also provide some input into that based on their being closer to the teams than I am typically. And then if we really have conversations and the principals work with me on the grades, and now the faculty member this year, Dr. Abby Shipp, but it's on the cusp, then, we may go to the, do they really kind of do some of the other things that are process things that were intended along the roadmap to lead to increase the likelihood of success. And again, those are the items that are captured up on EduSourced. So why for clients? Probably these are all obvious, but one is to augment existing resources. Again, there's only so much full-time or contract staff, and maybe they've got some extra budget and they can get something else done and augment those existing resources. Forsaken results. somewhat similar to the previous, but hey, we can get this other part of our necessary plan or validation done. Seeing talent in action. Ideal scenario is we have students who may not yet opted in to summer internship or nailed it down formally, and the client loves somebody on the team, and they have an internship, and the even ideal is that same individual gets to be selected as a principal. So we have the strengthening of when we come back next year, assuming that client does come back for the next formal semester, we have a principal that even if they don't have an internship there, if they are selected from that team, has insight into that client and is able to then help that team get jump started more quickly. The value for money invested. Perspective, some again they're getting augmenting resources done, maybe forsaken results, maybe even talent in action, maybe value for money invested, but they can use the team. Maybe it might be a new product or a product change they may be looking at. So while the team is working on an aspect of that same demographic group could also even be a part of that focus group for the client. The diversity of the projects I mentioned earlier, basically, as I tell a client, we could take a look at anything that falls into a marketing bucket, anything that falls into a process improvement bucket, anything that falls into a planning bucket, evaluation, feasibility studies, and business and financial modeling. Those are kind of the areas and the types of areas we've had project work and project successes in the past. Why do the full-time MBAs participate in the formal program? Again, it being a spring elective. This past year, we had the highest number, quote unquote, apply, and it was 82% applied. And, typically, we don't get those students that might be investment banking focused or, just kind of know what they really want to do. And maybe they've already had a consulting and experience in their background, but the word does get around. This is not an easy undertaking. But this is about being able to get some things while coming back to school for a full-time program that goes to your resume and gets you to really potentially check out new things and stretch. And do so in a safe environment where, things that you might make mistakes on here, we have the opportunity to provide feedback and hopefully any mistake that they may make individually or as a team is something that they learn from and don't make that when they leave the program. So we feel it helps students to, whether they recognize it or not, when they leave here to hit the ground running a little bit better than they would have otherwise. So so what are the skills real quickly? How to do a kickoff meeting, how you use an agenda to your advantage, real project management, and how to take a messy problem and scope it down. And, and that's really part of the learning here is that. And then the next item, managing a client. If we're all guilty of this, hey, you're doing this. Can you also take a look at this? Leadership and interpersonal skills, a lot of teams, as you can imagine, they have some crucial conversations with one another. Principals get some additional developmental training in this area. Executive presentation skills, how to they have that final presentation that they do very well, typically from a being able to get their points across and do so, but just generally how to succinctly and efficiently and effectively talk to time-constrained executives. With that, sort of is how to best to communicate with individuals at different styles and preferences. Clients have different preferences as to how they want to be communicated with or to. Leading conference calls and video conferences. And lastly, of course, critical thinking skills. We work hard to have them with all their final presentations. What could go wrong? You need to make sure you think through at a high level what could go wrong with whatever your final recommendations might be. So those are some of the things that skills that different students have the opportunity to develop. And again, everyone is different, so we feel the program has something to offer pretty much everyone that can advance an area that they either want to check out something new, industry, functional area, or also just gain some skills that'll be or feel more confident in some soft skills that'll help them in their future career. Well, I guess I kind of went into that next slide. They get to what do the MBAs get? Getting ahead of myself, I apologize. They get to apply some tools learned in the classroom. They get to check out a new industry, organization, functional discipline. It's a resume builder. Each of the first years get a seal that goes on their resumes. And so when they're interviewing, oftentimes the eye is drawn to the seal. And most of the interviews, a lot of times I'm told, are just talking about their current project. So it's a resume and a discussion builder. The select group have the opportunity to be selected as principals, and my biased perspective is these are real the leaders of the class and are those well-rounded individuals that as I think aspire to be have a career that ascends in one fashion or another. And here's the key thing. They then, to go through this program, they then have the opportunity to be compensated for any ad hoc engagements that come across the desk. And what is an ad hoc engagement? As I mentioned earlier, it can occur at any time of the calendar year. It has me and a program director looking at the viability of it. If there's we think that number one, our students can do it, and that our students might be interested. We find out if there's a budget available. Then we say, best thing to do is for you to come to campus. We will invite those that have been through the program to come and hear what you have to say. And in that, you need to communicate to them what you plan to compensate, whether, we would discuss that in advance and how that would work. And then we tell those students that come to hear that prospective ad hoc client, if you're interested, send your resume, why you think you should be selected, and conservatively, how many hours per week are you available if you are interested? Because this will be going into how many hours we go back to the client and say, these are the resources we have. These are the people we think that would be good fits for this. And as I said, the key thing here, second year MBAs, more experience. They don't have the supporting resources committed, although the advisory board is always available. They don't have that weekly roadmap. The faculty members typically don't be involved here, but if it is something that I feel that we need to have that resource, the client understands, and I have faculty members who have said they do want to be considered, it's $200 an hour. So I would build that into that ad hoc project. And as I said, the students get paid, and the benchmark I use, I tell the prospective ad hoc clients is that, look, career services tells me here's what the average is. I think you probably, with this group of people, could probably pay more, or you could probably pay less. So that's a conversation I'll have with the clients. And then depending upon that ad hoc project, just tack on some overage, the overage being what are we paying out to all the students, and let's get something in here to cover some meeting costs and billing costs. And for the ad hocs, pretty much it's my involvement when it comes to assisting with the scoping and being a resource to the team. So, all right, a lot there, but I think it's important to kind of give you that background before we get into the other topics that were on the agenda. So, David.
Yeah, so we have a quick live poll just to check in with you guys and see what you're doing in your programs. This is about the fee you may or may not charge per project. So that's up now if you can respond to that. And then while you're doing that, we'll go over some questions really quickly. Somebody joined a couple minutes late, Ed, and asked how many projects you are delivering each year. And I take that to mean across your different formats.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it was on one of those earlier slides, and last year we had 12 or 13 total.
Okay, and the next question is,
And then, excuse me, David. The mix there is, roughly, like right now we have 10 quote unquote formal spring semester projects. So, it's again depending upon, how many students come in first year, what the ratio is that apply. But yes, typically say 8 to 9 formal. This year's a little higher with 10, and maybe say 3 ad hoc.
Okay, and the next question is, do any of your projects require NDAs? If so, how are your teams able to present the different panels while adhering to those NDA commitments?
Yep, great question. So obviously we tell the clients about all of this, and we tell the clients, do you want these other parties to be involved? And if so, then we get them to sign the same NDA as the student does. So for the panel, when we put the panels together, even, obviously we have to make sure that not only do they sign an NDA, but also that we don't put anyone in a panel that could potentially have a side interest in some fashion. So we work with the clients as it works for them, but yes, NDAs are involved, and some clients are more assertive. We have a project with one right now where when I did the briefing yesterday on the first status update, the team told me, Ed, there's people in this organization that don't even know next door. And we educated them that, okay, here's how the NDAs could be handled, but, we need to communicate with the client that, we will work with them in any particular way, but these are all professionals, whether it's faculty members or the business executives that we invite to sit on those panels. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and we got the results back from the poll. It's remarkable to me how consistent. Anytime I see polling data on project project fees, about half of the projects are free, and the other half are pretty well distributed, usually under 20,000. It's those outliers that, the 100K plus, that kind of thing. So that is up. Everybody should be able to see that now. The next question for you, Ed, is have you had any issue with that money back guarantee policy?
Never.
Okay, simple enough. And is there any interaction between the case competition and the consulting side of your program?
Any interaction between the case competition and the consulting side? Before I answer that, let me go back to the previous question, that money back guarantee. It's hard in this, and I know it's been pretty much a unilateral kind of quote unquote vomit here, but there's a lot of checks and balances we built in from a quality perspective. When you look at the experience of whether it's the faculty subject matter expert or the consultant, right? Really in particular, and as we tell the students as they go out, guys, it's not about the grade. It ain't about the grade. You're out there and you're representing yourself, but you're representing this program, and they take it to heart, and we tell them we're all in this together, guys. We're here to, we're here in case you get off track. We're here to help you get back on track. So let's come back to the next question about the case competition and Neeley and Associates integration. Off the top of my head, I cannot think of any. No.
Okay. And one last question before we move on to the rest of the content. How do you acquire projects? Do you have a budget to actively market your program?
I think we'll address that within the next slide or two, but do we have a budget to market? No. Pretty much, I guess, I get compensated here. I do some other things now over the years beyond Neeley and Associates. So I am out in the community, and of course we've been able to build up a track record, but at first Well, why don't I move ahead, because that's something I was going to talk about, unless
Sure.
there's another question.
Well, before you do that, so we just did the second live poll. Would you say your experiential program is formally or informally managed? And we left that open-ended kind of intentionally. There doesn't seem to be a clear definition of best practice around what constitutes formally managed. You could say it's having a committed office. I mean, there are a bunch of different factors, but just wanted to hear from you all, the community, how you see your program. And interestingly, a small majority does feel their program is formally managed. I suspect if we'd done this 5 years ago, that number would have been very, very small. From our side, we're seeing schools more and more, quote unquote, formally manage their program. And that does often mean, hiring somebody from industry, perhaps like you, Ed, to come in and operate the program. But I'll go ahead and close that out and we can continue with the slides.
Okay, good. Thank you, David. Okay, let's first do some of the challenges. Okay, so at the beginning, so the gentleman who brought me in, the incoming Associate Dean of Graduate Programs back in about 2006, I guess, said, Ed, okay, you need to have a faculty partner. And that was Dr. Larry Peters. And so I obviously, you're coming into a totally new environment. And that person was able to be my guest Sherpa to help me with any landmines and also run cover for me where necessary. And then the other item related to securing faculty buy-in at the beginning was just making clear that faculty, are going to get paid, but it's not going to be one where they own the work. They, some issues with projects in the past had been the dean would say, take this on so-and-so, and the students necessarily may not have done the level of quality as either the client or the faculty member wanted or expected. And, that faculty member, as I understand, felt like he or she really had to now spend extra time to make sure that we had a happy client. So here they were being a resource behind the scenes and just being paid for those resource hours. Building the infrastructure. And you're right, David, 5 years ago, when I look at, there wasn't much around 13 years ago. But it has increased over the years because just the recognition of whether you call it applied learning or experiential learning is just so important. Getting agreements in place, building the brand, and that goes back to the budget. So the first year, obviously there were some marketing costs back then. Put together a nice fancy brochure, mailed it out to alumni, and that pretty much, I think, then we had to develop the website. So that pretty much has been the cost, and the last, so many years, I've been no money spent on any marketing materials since. Putting together the whole process of invoicing and collections, getting people paid, which has been at times in an organization like academic like this, having a root canal without Novocaine, but getting that through, whether it's a student or a faculty member, sometimes an outside consultant, and building all these process templates that we've been able to, over the years, to this continual, just improvement. Let's see, what is Ed's arrangement? Well, again, I was an oddball. I'm this person that, my staff and my faculty, you're teaching a course, but, you're really staff. And then, at one point having to deal with, how does Ed get away doing what he does? And just having to work through that over the years. And again, getting support up above to ensure that, we are able to do, and what I am able to do is able to be supported appropriately. Conflict areas have been, just where, going back to the students' pride in the projects, that that sense of, that client comes first. The classes are great, but I got to take care. It's been impressed upon me. This is what, my resume builder. This is what's going to be, but I feel I can really own and represent myself in the institution. So, especially during finals week, we worked always to get all the final presentations done between, quote unquote, when finals are supposed to be per the university. And again, this is one of the things that I had to learn, that finals are given, by faculty, often not when, finals are on the schedule. And so we've learned to kind of reach out to faculty, make them, make them aware and see what they're doing, and do our best to not have those any final presentations overlap with something, and with something that a faculty member has, especially during, again, finals week. And that has been just an ongoing just communication back and forth, and and leading into that, it's been on global trips where mostly on the global trips part, it's been with our second year principals that, we have an annual recognition transition dinner and reception, and again, some of the principals having to say, hey, I've already paid for my trips, just things like that, being aware of what's going on with faculty, and just being attuned to that. So have lessons learned there. And then just what should the program be? And I have bounced back between, first, we just want a few number of students that are the cream of the crop, and, that we're going to be, it's going to be held up as the, that if, the best thing that the full-time MBA program has to offer, to where, it is open as it is now to all students as an elective, to where, should it be required? And I think we've landed in the right place. Even as recently as 2 years ago, I thought, I just see all the benefits we provide, and should it be required in some way? And, the person said to me, and it was like, oh, have a V8. You're going to get people in there that are in it only because it is required. They don't understand all the other value propositions that exist here. They don't care maybe about them. And, you're going to have to maybe you're going to have the greater likelihood of quality delivery being less than it has been. So I think we're in a sweet spot right now. But those are some of the, I guess, lessons learned and challenges faced there. Going back to the recruiting and just sort of building trust. At first, I guess, kind of key lessons learned in the selection and invitation process. The first year, what I did was I invited more prospective clients. And of course, I didn't have a pool of second years through that could work on ad hoc projects. But, I had, two prospective clients I invited, and there weren't enough students around to serve them. And, I had to deal with, people that were disappointed, and lesson learned. But that gets back to every year that working to balance and understanding, supply and demand. But in launching it, I mentioned earlier about the brochures that went out to alumni. So we got a couple of projects that way the first year. Dean has a board of visitors. Reached out to the board of visitors, the dean, and then just my network in the DFW market. So a pretty low cost of acquisition, if you didn't account, take into account my direct compensation. And I just mentioned about gauging who to invite, not disappointing any prospective first-time clients. So every year, try not to invite necessarily more than one to meet prospective client day, but again, tell the client if they're not selected that we know we can serve them with a second year MBA team. Talked about the MoneyBack Guarantee. I take good care of everybody involved with this program, and getting back, take good care of the clients. I take good care of my advisory board members, and I take good care of my executive panelists. And by that, nice, nothing elaborate, but nice dinners. Make sure that they have gifts, and that's what some of that overage goes in the budget to make sure that we're building and sustaining relationships that count. Changes in the client's sponsor support. We've got recurring clients now, whether it's Lockheed Martin, Frito-Lay, Michaels, Sabre, Alcon, GM Financial, but their people turn over. And so the things that relate earlier to that point about taking good care of people, I have a situation now where we've got a sponsor who's ready to retire, And we are working hard to make sure that that person is going to have to find someone internally to, hopefully continue our good relationship. So anyway, those are just, I guess, recruiting, those fee-paying clients, and just things we do to build trust. It's about setting expectations and, just being, let people know that we really appreciate them. Okay, in summary, formal versus ad hoc. Okay, formal, 6, 3-credit elective, 350-hour, 4-person team, first-year MBAs, weekly roadmap that to refer to, the supporting resources. You have an academic who should be deep in the content. You have a principal who's been through the program and is coaching and leading the team. You have the advisory board member who's a professional consultant, whether it's a managing director, partner, or a senior manager, but they're there to help with scoping, do quality assurance reviews. You have the business perspective coming in, which may bring in a different viewpoint. We all kind of get into our own forest. And then you have me, and then Dr. Ship. So you have all these supporting resources with their roles very clearly delineated that, again, add to, I think, the quality of our delivery. And as I mentioned here, the principals and the faculty subject matter experts are the ones who are compensated as serving as a resource. The ad hoc can occur any time of the year. Just need to make sure that the client has some money. Secondly, that we think students can do it. Thirdly, that we think they'd be interested. But we also then tell the prospective client, we just don't know who the resources are. We don't know what's available. I forgot to mention this earlier, what's available, who's available, because I don't know where every student is, even if it is a small program, what their internship situation is, what they're looking for a job situation is, what their class load is. So we invite that person or people to campus, and we go through that process of having those second-year MBAs who've been through the program, quote unquote, apply to be selected, but importantly, give their hours, and we sit down and work with the client to put together a team of people that can work on what they want to have worked on within the time frames that we have. And there in the ad hoc, our students are directly compensated. Roughly the average here in the DFW market, at least for career services the past year, was $36 an hour. The most we've gotten has been about $50 an hour if you had to break it down on an hourly rate for our students. So formal versus ad hoc. Quickly, the hands-on leadership development, the principals compensated for development training. They help improve the program. They deliver the boot camps. I hand off the relationships to each of them once we line up the prospective clients. They really gain experience being responsible for a team's deliverable, and they get experience coaching a team and learning really how to provide constructive feedback. And that's something we've been working more so on with the principals this year. So again, continue enhancement and development every year. The last particular option, which is an area that we could grow more in, is what we call Neeley Insights, which is a client that comes, or even I meet a new client and I want to have them see what our students can do. Say, you have an issue or opportunity, a need, whatever, and that, and then they either come to us or I kind of put it out there, and it would be very short duration because, again, I tell that prospective client that, hey, just don't know. We need to kind of keep this short term, but do you have some money? Put up some prize money. Make sure we get executives, to here, and we have internal teams then from Neeley where students put themselves together. And they pick the teammates, as I said, and they get to present to the executives, where again it is something that ideally it could be the students that they're targeting, or a new product or service, or tweaking ones for this particular target audience. Those are the ideal ones. And the student gets the money, for the winners. They get practice, exposure, resume building. And the sponsoring organization gets to see talent in action while getting something validated or assessed. So that's what we call Neeley Insights. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, David.
Okay, and we just have a couple minutes left, but we'll go through these questions quickly. One is during the three boot camps you mentioned earlier, he assumes you deliver content, lecture, and instruction. Are there other times when you provide this type of content? Do you provide other content resources?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me take a stab at. We have when the curriculum gets set, we have a classroom, and that classroom right now is Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 6, whatever. We do have, so maybe this year we had the first 2 Tuesdays and the first Thursday there were classes, and then we have the boot camp. Other content will come up as we customize it if the team needs extra training. And or if they need, one year we needed to give them, training on some database software. This was years ago, but it really becomes more specific to that project. Yeah, really, yeah. The students after that, they're running that project like this. It's their own, except they have all the resources to give them assistance and coach them along the way.
Okay, and have you ever had an ad hoc project team not complete their deliverable before their graduation? And then do you have a transition to a new team to a project? How does that work?
Okay, not complete their deliverable. What was the second part, David?
And you have to, so if they don't complete their deliverable, and then you have to transition to a new team to complete that project. Has that come up
Okay.
before, and how have you handled it if it has?
Yeah, the answer to that is no. And because again, along the way, you're in continually you have these meetings with the client. One of the things that, with all the teams have is a weekly at a minimum conference call, and they're working their project plan, and the project plan has milestones. And so the client has that. And so if things get off track, you make tweaks along the way, and ultimately you do get a deliverable. It may not be what you originally started, but that's how things work. I will say that I've had a recent learning experience. We are starting to do some interdisciplinary projects. I did one with the engineering school last year, Adhoc. Our engineering school is all undergrads. I honestly didn't want to do it because the resources I had available from the MBA were not my stellar group. But I wanted to start this interdisciplinary. I wanted that to be, because again, this construction company was said we'd like to have ongoing yabba dabba do. And I had 3 international students that hadn't done really well in their previous teams the first year, but they were available, expressed interest, but they were checking out. And I honestly, just between all of us, group photo and all this stuff, I had to work with the client. The client was satisfied, but I was amazed. But I just was very disappointed with that. I felt the undergraduates did a better job than our MBAs on that. So they completed their deliverable. Was it the quality that they should have had in that time frame? No.
Okay, and there are a few more questions, but I want to respect everybody's time since we're past the hour. So what we'll do is we'll do a write-up, including these questions and some responses from Ed, and we'll post that to our website probably sometime in the next week. This session itself is, as I mentioned at the beginning, being recorded, and then we'll post this on our site too. So if you want to go back and rewatch it or share it out, that'll be available. I want to thank all of you for joining, and Ed Riefenstahl, our presenter, I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your program with us.
Yeah, David, real quickly. Yeah, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank you because just, we all have things that, everybody's program is different, our perspective program. So hopefully there's something here today that might be helpful, a new thought or whatever, maybe a lesson learned that can not, that maybe something you won't have to do. But I think doing this is so important because all of us have to tailor things for our respective programs that we think will work best.
Well, that's great. Thank you for that. And everybody take care. Have a nice rest of your day.